Hi, welcome to Iron Health Talk with Dr. Akram. I am Akram. In this program, we'll be talking about all kind of different health issues with different experts in the field. But today, we're going to talk about to vaccinate or not. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your time with us. They kill us by the millions, but without them, life is impossible. Viruses has been living in the world for 4 billion years, as far as the world has been created. Mammals like humans can carry up to 320,000 species of viruses with them. Let's imagine a world without viruses, without the rabies, the polio, measles, mumps, HIV, the Zika virus, herpes, variola, which has been extinct as in the wild since 1977. But of course, the SARS-CoV-19. Do you feel better? Don't. But out of 2 million viruses living in the world, only a handful of them can harm human. Most of them are not. Human placenta genes derive from virus DNA. This gene is called syncytin-2. The adaptation helped us to survive. And of course, there is another one called gene ARC that is expressed in our neurons, neuronal activity, simply in our memory. On the other hand, 8% of our DNA comes from the virus, especially the retroviral DNA. Today, we are not going to talk all the good about the viruses. We are here to talk about an unfriendly, virulent virus who managed to crash the economies, managed to stop the wars in Middle East, crashed stock market worldwide, kept flights landed, and imprisoned us inside our houses in bubbles. That is none other than the SARS-CoV-19. We're going to talk about how the modern human tackled this pathogen and the biggest arsenal they have created called vaccine. So let's welcome our special guest on the show, Professor Suranjit Seneviratne. He's a professor and consultant in clinical immunology and allergy at Royal Free Hospital University College of London. Suranjit, thank you very much for being with us here.
Thank you, Akram. Thank you very much.
And you are the right person for vaccine because you know a lot and this is your field.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
okay.
you. Thanks.
Before we start the program, can you tell about yourself?
Yes, so I'm Suranjit Seneviratne, professor and consultant in immunology and allergy at the Royal Free Hospital and University College London and the Health Services Laboratory in London, which is one of the biggest it's the biggest laboratory in London. And I did my PhD, trained in clinical immunology and allergy at the John Ratcliffe Hospital in Oxford. And then I did my PhD at the University of Oxford on molecular immunology. And then subsequently, I took up my first consultant post was at Imperial College London, St. Mary's Hospital. And in 2011, I crossed over to the Royal Free Hospital and University College London.
So what's your interest in vaccine?
So I think an immunologist would definitely be sort of immersed in, because we know vaccinations and vaccines have been one of the biggest advances in medicine over the years, and a clinical immunologist would be sort of intimately connected with vaccination, because one thing is to boost immunity, and we would that is one of the ways that we used as a process to produce antibodies and T cells, which are important parts of the immune system.
Excellent. Can you explain, before we go ahead, about our immune system? How does it work?
Yes. So I think if we take it as sort of a defense system, so if it is now any country has the army, the air force, the navy, and the police. And if there's an enemy, you get these systems getting activated. You don't get everything going immediately. So in the same way, the immune system is the defense system of the body. So you have the first part of the immune system, you have the second part of the immune system, and they have to work in tandem, in together, in coordination. So first part is called innate immune system, that's a word, and the second part is called adaptive, just technical term. You have antibodies, you have white cells, and you have something called complement. So the antibodies and white cells will go zap up the virus or bacteria. It's the danger signal. Virus and bacteria, they will zap up and get rid of it. Now, if that system is not working well, that is called immune deficiency. Sometimes the immune system behaves in a sort of an odd way where they start attacking your own body cells, and that is called autoimmunity, or it attacks things that are found in the environment like cat, dog, dander, etc., and that's called allergy.
That's called the allergy. Okay.
So you have immune deficiency, where the immune system is not working well. If it's misbehaving itself and trying to attack things that it should not attack, then it's called autoimmunity and allergy. So we just want to bring it back into baseline if one of those processes go out of control.
But generally for us, the immune system works well. And
yes,
it's day to day, it kills a lot of bacteria and viruses which harms us, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that matures from the time you're born. It matures and develops to a level that protects you against the multitude of bacteria, viruses, fungi that you're exposed to.
Okay, let's talk about the vaccines. Now, why do we need these vaccines?
Yes. So
in general,
if a person gets an infection, the immune system comes into place and you get antibodies and the white cells, the T cells and the B cells. But the problem is during that process, and then that would produce memory. That is, the next time you meet the infection, there will be memory which will prevent the person getting that infection or getting bad. But the problem is that if you get an infection, certain people can become very ill or they can die. So what we try to do with vaccines is try to mimic a natural infection. So rather than allowing the child to get sort of measles, you will get a vaccine to mimic that process so that the antibodies and white cells are produced. So when the child meets the measles virus, that child would not get a severe infection or get infected. Similarly, with SARS-CoV-2, we are trying to mimic the immune system and produce the antibodies, produce the cells, so that we would have protection when we meet the SARS-CoV-2.
So it's a kind of, if you look at a country and the military, it's something like the training they do, isn't it? The whole over the year they're training.
Absolutely. Being ready and quick off the mark, because to attack the organism that is attacking.
So the training is the vaccine.
Absolutely.
Simply. Excellent.
Yes, and you have memory. That's the important.
So when you get the memory and it's in your body, you're ready to fight, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And we're going to play a video until the studio get ready for the video. Let's talk more about the vaccine. How does virus attack a cell, and does it enter the cell? How does it work generally?
So viruses need the machinery of the cell, that is parts of the cell, to be able to multiply. What we use the word replication, we need it to multiply, because they need that. So they have to come into the cell, and how they come into the cell is they bind to a certain receptor, as I would say a door. Excellent.
Let's play this video and it'll explain a bit more in animation. Thank you very much for Scientific Animations from the YouTube. This is an amazing video, and thank you for providing us from the YouTube. Thank you.
SARS-CoV-2 is a novel coronavirus that is responsible for the COVID-19 infection. The virus works by entering healthy human cells through the crown-shaped protein spikes on its surface. A promising candidate for the treatment of COVID-19 is a messenger RNA-based vaccine from Moderna Medical. Messenger RNA, or mRNA, are strands of genetic material similar to DNA that ribosomes in the cell use to synthesize proteins. Moderna's mRNA vaccine contains the instructions to synthesize the crown-shaped protein spikes on the surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus. The vaccine is encapsulated into a lipid layer that allows it to enter the cell. Once inside the cell, the mRNA are released and ribosomes in the cell read them to synthesize the virus's spike proteins, which are then released from the cell. The spikes themselves are not harmful, but the human immune system perceives them as though the body has been infected with COVID-19. In response, the immune system produces antibodies against the SARS-CoV-2 virus. In the presence of an actual COVID-19 infection, these antibodies prevent the virus from entering a healthy cell by attaching themselves onto the spike proteins, thereby blocking their entry into the healthy cell and thus creating immunity.
Go ahead and explain a little bit more. I think we have shown the video as well.
Yes.
And how does this virus enter the cells?
Yes, so when it comes to SARS-CoV-2, you have on the surface of the virus, you have this protein called the spike protein. So spike protein binds to a receptor, which is called, you would have heard about it, ACE2. So it binds there, and then the virus is internalized, taken into the cell, and it releases its RNA, which it's an RNA virus, and then the RNA would be acted on by parts of the cell to produce viral proteins, and then another virus is produced from that.
So it's go inside and hijack the cell, isn't it?
Absolutely. It uses the machinery of the cell for its own purpose, and then it produces more viruses.
So once inside and the cell does not know what to do, isn't it? It basically produces...
It's taken over by the absolute, as that hijack is absolutely.
It's quite interesting how it works. Virus is not even a cell, isn't it?
And it needs the cell. That's the important thing.
That's important, yeah.
That's the important.
Basic response after infection, what happens?
Yes, so once you get a what we say acute phase response. That's important because immediate response is needed where people get inflammation. The inflammation is important. You don't want too much of inflammation, but certain amounts of inflammation is important. And then you find that would help to get rid of the organism together with the immune system kicking into play. So you have the neutrophils, the white type of white cells, then you have the first part of the immune system like the infantry going in battle, and then you find after that you have the antibodies developing. It takes a bit of time for the antibody. That's why just because you get the vaccine today doesn't mean you have protection tomorrow, because it takes time. And then the other white cells come in, the T cells, the very important cell called the T cell. And the important thing is antibodies, T cells plus the first part of the immune system act in concert together to get rid of the organism.
So let's explain a little bit more about the inflammation. Inflammation is the process where you get the fever, is that right?
Yes. So the thing is that when you get an organism, when you get a bacterial virus, you don't want that person to be running a marathon, running around, etc. So you have some fever, body aches and pain. Because the immune system communicates, the cells of the immune system communicate with each other. And they communicate using chemicals called cytokines. That's right. So the cytokines, sometimes it does quite a lot of good thing, but it also produces some fever, body aches and pain, etc.
So this is a good thing?
Absolutely, you do need that. What we don't want to happen is there to be too much of inflammation, because if there's too much inflammation, and that was what was happening in SARS-CoV-2, there was too much of inflammation, that is hyperinflammation. That is what we don't want.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Suranjit. We're going to talk more about vaccines, but anyway, if anyone joined today, the program is about to vaccinate or not. And we're going to see you after a short break. Hi, welcome back to Iron Health Talk with Dr. Akram. Today we're talking about to vaccinate or not. And in our studio we have Professor Suranjit Senaviratne, who is a professor in immunology and allergy. Excellent. Thank you very much, Suranjit, for being with us. And there is a caller straight away with us. Hello.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum assalam, bhai. What's your name, please?
My name is Ahmed.
Ahmad, yeah, thank you very much for calling us. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, can I ask something about diabetics?
Is it about the COVID vaccine?
No. I'm talking about can I ask something about diabetics? I am diabetic patient.
Okay, lovely. We would love to answer your question. You know what we do? Leave your number with the studio. We'll call you back immediately after the program, and I will talk to you. But we're talking about the vaccine, so we are running out of time. We'll definitely call you back. Leave your number with the studio, and we'll call you back. Yeah.
So you want me to disconnect and call again?
No. You could do that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Let's go ahead. Yeah, let's talk about inflammation.
Yes. So inflammation is a process that is needed by the immune system. You have the immune system cells talking to each other. They produce chemicals, cytokines, chemokines. That's like we use language, and then you get a certain amount of inflammation. And you don't want too much of inflammation, because that is not good. And the immune cells that are produced, you have cells called B cells and then T cells. What B cells do is produce antibodies, which is a very, very important part of the immune system.
That's a memory, isn't it? Antibodies, kind of.
It's an antibody, but then you want the B cells to remain in the body as memory cells, so that the next time it won't take such a long time to get the antibodies into action. Excellent. Because you want there to be quick responses the second time you have an infection.
I'm going to hold you there and quickly get this call. Hello.
Such a long time to get the antibodies into action, because you want there to be quick responses.
Hello.
I'm going to hold you there.
Okay. The call is not getting connected. I'm sorry. Okay, let's talk about cellular response with COVID-19.
Yes, antigen. So I think lots of people have been talking about the antibody response, and people have been focusing about vaccine antibody, but we have to remember that there is a cellular, that is T cell, what we call T cells, CD4 cells, CD8 cells. And that is an important element to remember, because in addition to the antibodies, you have T cells, CD4 and CD8 T cells that get together to get rid of the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
So these all are different cells which protects our body.
Absolutely, right? Absolutely. Now the T cells are produced in the bone marrow.
T cells, okay.
T cells, they go into the thymus, what is a gland just in front of the heart, when you're a child, and it goes, what we say, to nursery. They get educated there, and the good cells are sent out into the bloodstream, and the B cells directly go from the bone marrow into the bloodstream.
So B from bone marrow.
B, and then you have the T cells.
T cells. Okay, so they are the cells which protects our body with these all these infections coming on. That's excellent. Why can't our body produce antibody for COVID naturally? Why do we need this vaccine?
We do produce it.
Do we produce? Okay.
Yes, because I mean, if you get if you get the SARS-CoV-2 infection or COVID-19, you find the virus is SARS-CoV-2 and the infection is COVID-19. So that's a name. So you would produce antibodies, you would produce T cells. But the problem is that whilst you're waiting for that, a certain proportion would end up in hospital, 10% of patients. Some would die, especially people with comorbidities, that is with hypertension, diabetes, obesity, etc. So you will produce the antibodies and T cells, but in the process you can get a lot of people into hospital, and that could affect the health services, because we would not be able to cope up with so many people getting severe disease.
Severe disease. It's something like a country knows imminently there is a war, and they don't prepare, they just sit down and relax themselves. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
And the war comes, they are not ready to fight.
Right. And I think the originally long, I mean, say February, March last year, people were wondering whether we could, a lot of people could get SARS-CoV-2 infection, and then whether we will get what we call herd immunity, that is a good amount of the population being immune to the virus. But that would have been at the expense of a lot of people ending up in hospital, and the NHS not being able to cope up, or lots of people not being dying from the infection.
Since you said about herd immunity, let's elaborate a bit more about the herd immunity. What is that?
Yeah, so if we have a certain proportion of the population that is immune to the virus, it varies from about 60 to 80%, etc. You will find that there is what is called population immunity, and the virus then, the spread of the virus is limited to a great extent. So I mean, it would be ideal to get 100% people immune, right? But what we have this concept of herd immunity to get a certain proportion of the population immune to the virus, so that
roughly what kind of population we need to get
so it's about
immune?
At least 60 to 70%.
60 to 70%.
That has to be given, because it depends on the amount of transmission. Because if the transmission is high, then you'll find that your amount of population that you have to get immunity is higher. So it depends on the transmission in the country.
That's a very good explanation, isn't it? So either they get the infection and 60% of the population get the infection and they get this herd immunity, or you vaccinate that amount
to get that percentage of people getting immune to the
so that will break the transmission chain.
Because then there wouldn't be sufficient amount of people who are not immune to get the infection. Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about this vaccine now. Let's go into the subject. Okay, there are lots of things going on in the YouTube and lots of other channels in some other countries, especially in main TV channels as well, in newspapers. There's a lot of things going on about this vaccine. Have they lost these protocols? Have they just made it like a quick fix?
Okay, so I think if we looked at anyone considering a vaccine in March, April, May, people were just not believing that we would not be able to produce a vaccine for SARS-CoV-2, because we had infections like HIV, malaria, TB, which we don't have good vaccines.
Yeah.
However, I think the world came together with a lot of different resources coming together, and they worked parallelly. That is, previously when you did the vaccine, when you developed a vaccine, it took years, 15 years. The reason being, you did preclinical studies, that is before you went to the patient, then you did the phase 1, then you did after you finished the phase 1, you waited some time, you analyzed the data, then you did phase 2, then you did phase 3, etc.
Phase 1 is what?
Phase 1 is the initial study to see if the vaccine is safe, immunogenic. You have to see whether it is safe, if the vaccine is safe.
So you try in animals?
First animals, and then you do in the laboratory, then animals, then you do it in humans, and you have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. Okay. But here what happened was, if things were telescoped together. That is, whilst phase 1 was being done, phase 2 and 3 were also starting.
Okay.
So it was just telescoped together, and while the studies were going on, the regulators were getting the data, the country regulators were getting the data, and they were going through the data, so that, because previously, one phase had to finish before they even decided to start on the next phase.
So to make it clear, they didn't cut down the protocols.
No.
They did everything right,
Absolutely.
But they have done all together rather than doing step by step.
Rather than doing it one after the other, they did it together in parallelly. Yeah. So when the animal studies were going, at the same time you were getting human studies, which would have not occurred previously.
That's a good point. I think there is no time here with the infection going around and killing lots of people. We didn't have time to wait.
Absolutely.
So we needed to speed up things, but we did it exactly how it has to be.
As it should be done. Absolutely.
Different vaccines available, and the principles behind them.
Yes, so I think now we all know, so let's take a virus. So the virus can be taken it's a live virus. That's one method. You can attenuate it, change it so that it's not dangerous. That's called a live attenuated.
Live attenuated.
Second is you take the virus and you can kill it, or you can it's inactivated.
Inactivated.
Right? So those are two. We know those vaccines. We have had those vaccines for a long period of time. You have the live vaccines like the measles, mumps, rubella. I mean, so we knew those two vaccine construct, but it takes time. You have to labs have to deal with live virus in that instance. You want to kill the virus, you have to have that virus initially in the lab. So that's two methods. Then you have the newer methods. The one is the subunit vaccine. That is, you take parts of the virus, not the whole virus, but parts of the virus, and you can inject it to people.
That's called subunit
vaccine. That's the third one. Then you have the fourth one, where you use what we call the mRNA technique, where you take the genetic material of the virus, the mRNA, and then coat it with lipid and get it into the cells. So the mRNA, this molecule called mRNA, it's generally unstable. When it goes into the cell, it is changed by the part of the cell called ribosome into proteins, and the proteins then are recognized by the immune system and you make an immune response. So that is the mRNA vaccine. Now the important thing is the mRNA does not get attached to the DNA, because there is question about does it get integrated or attached to it? No, it doesn't, because it breaks down. That's the reason why the -70 has to be used, -20 has to be used in storing these and transporting these vaccines.
Okay, I'm going to go back to that. This mRNA does not get prescribed into DNA.
Does not get, as we say, it does not get integrated into the DNA. Yes.
Okay. So that's
the fourth method.
That's the fourth method.
And the last method is where we use another viral vector, as we say, just a carrier. So the Oxford vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine, what they did was they used a chimpanzee virus, chimpanzee adenovirus, that is a virus that causes colds in chimpanzees, right? It doesn't have any chimpanzee material. It is
no
a virus.
Chimpanzee there. Okay.
It's a virus that causes a cold in chimpanzee. They took that, put the part of the SARS-CoV-2, the spike protein part, and that is the virus that takes the part of the SARS-CoV-2 into the cell. So therefore, it is taken into the cell and then the protein is produced, and then you find that the immune system recognizes it. So that is the Oxford vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca, and there's another company, J&J, the Johnson & Johnson, which has taken, or the Gamaleya, that is the Russian vaccine, which has taken the human adenovirus, not the chimpanzee adenovirus, human adenovirus, and a similar process is going on.
Excellent. Why do we need that really cold temperatures for this, especially this mRNA vaccine?
Because
told about, but
absolutely.
I want to explain a bit more.
It's a very important question, because it's not stable otherwise, right? It's not stable. mRNA is an unstable molecule, and if it goes into when it goes into the cell, before it goes in cell, if you don't keep that low temperature, you'll find that by the time you're giving the vaccine, the vaccine is not effective.
Break,
absolutely, and that is why once it gets to the cell, it does its job and then it breaks down and it doesn't get integrated into the
mRNA vaccine is quite precise, isn't it? You just take the precise
absolutely, and it's very fast. It's very fast. I mean, you look, because on the 11th of February or 11th of January, sorry, it was 11th of January, they released the sequence of the virus. And then from that moment onwards, they were able to produce the mRNA vaccine quite quickly, because you make it synthetic. You don't need actual viruses, because if you want to have live viruses, you have to have special labs, etc. Here you can make it synthetic.
Okay, thank you very much, Suranj. I think we're going to talk more about these vaccines. Now this is time to go for another quick breaks. Anyway, if anyone joined today, we're talking about to vaccinate or not. So be with us. We're going to see you shortly after break. Thank you. Hi, welcome back to Iron Health Talk with Dr. Akram. And today we are talking about to vaccinate or not. In our studio, we have a special guest, Professor Suranjit Senaviratne, who is a professor and a consultant clinical immunology and allergy at Royal Free Hospital and University College of London. Suranjit, thank you very much for being with us. Okay, let's go quickly back to viral vector vaccines. You said there is no chimpanzee material. Fine. Are there pig material?
No, there is no human or animal material.
There is no
in those
pig
vaccines.
material.
Absolutely.
Protein? Any particles of cows?
No, absolutely no. Absolutely no animal or human material.
Okay, this is a different one. Are there any chips that government can monitor you where you're going around?
Absolutely no. Absolutely, there isn't. It doesn't come into the manufacturing process. Absolutely.
So I think it will be too expensive as well.
Exactly, and it's not a. I mean, viral vector vaccines have been described. So
there's no monitoring devices as well in the vaccine. And the other one is, can this vaccine cause cancer?
So far, there's no signal. We know it's short period, but they have been using these vaccines, the RNA vaccines, for cancer treatment, because that is where it was trialed.
So you can make a vaccine to treat cancer.
Absolutely, mRNA
but
vaccines,
not to cause cancer.
Exactly, that was what it was investigated. Right, people would follow it. These vaccines definitely, like we follow all vaccines. It's not only for SARS-CoV-2. We would follow every vaccine and look for any signals, but there is no signal at the moment.
At the moment. Okay, there is a caller here. Let's join the caller as well. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, thank you for calling us. And Iron Health Talk with Dr. Akram. What's your name, please?
My name is Amal.
Amal, thank you very much for calling us. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from West London.
Excellent, sir. Please go ahead with your question.
Okay, Dr. Senaviratne, thank you very much for being available.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering, with the vaccinations, I think you've touched on the fact that there is some sort of anti-vaxxers around who are sort of not taking the vaccines, and I think there are a lot of them in the BAME communities, and I think the government is trying to make and reach out to those communities to try and encourage them to take the vaccine. I'm a little bit concerned. I think we're all from Sri Lanka here on this call right now.
Yes.
And there isn't any effort really being made to reach out to the Sinhalese community. I know there's been people trying to make videos for the Tamil community. Is anything being done to address that,
I think this is one program that would be going to some in the Sri Lankan community. But then I think in Sinhalese, Akram was speaking about it, and I think they are thinking about doing these programs, because that's so important to give the correct information with regards to these vaccines, because if people know the correct information, they would not be overwhelmed by the amount of sort of half-truths or absolute untruths that are going with regards to vaccine. So I think there is a lot of process going on now, and Akram was speaking to me yesterday about how do you try to get the Sri Lankan community in the UK. I know in Sri Lanka there are quite a lot of programs which people are trying to do, but I think all these programs will add up and help people understand the sort of the basic aspects, so that we would not get confused and overwhelmed by information, and get it from people who have been looking at this on a day-to-day basis as part of their career and part of their job. That's it.
I think that's a very good point. You brought it here. I think we should make a clear video in Sri Lankan Sinhalese language to elaborate the importance of the vaccine.
Absolutely.
Amal, are you happy with the answer? Thank you very much, Amal. Okay, there is another caller there. Hello? Okay, until we get connected. Okay, let's elaborate about the different kinds of vaccines available.
As I said, there are 5 types of vaccine.
5 types of vaccines. Yeah.
There is the live attenuated and the inactivated vaccine, which we all know about. We have grown up with those vaccines. Then you have the subunit vaccine. You have the mRNA vaccine. We still don't have the DNA vaccine.
So
the
mRNA is a Pfizer vaccines, are they?
It's a Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine.
Moderna vaccine.
Those are the 2. We don't have the Moderna vaccine still in the UK, but that has been, it's used quite a lot in the US.
And the Oxford vaccine?
And the Oxford vaccine is a viral vector vaccine.
Viral vector vaccine.
That's the 5th type. And then towards the end of this month, most likely, the next viral vector vaccine would be possibly approved. That is the J&J vaccine. And the important thing to remember, we cannot manage to vaccinate the whole world with one vaccine. You do need a lot of types.
You do need a lot of vaccines.
Types, because you cannot, no company can produce so many vaccines of one type to vaccinate the sort of the big population.
Okay, this is a really important question. A lot of people have been asking about me. There are lots of vaccines around. Now, people are finding difficult to trust the vaccines around. What is your opinion on it?
So, one important thing from someone who is working in the field, who would not, as a scientist, as a clinician, we would not accept things which are subpar for our patients. And we know that, looking at the information that has been released, that the vaccine trials have been conducted in the way it should be conducted, and they are being looked at in detail by the different regulators, the country's regulators, and they spend hours on end to see that it has been done properly. So the vaccines that have been approved so far in the UK, so far 3 have been approved. That is the Pfizer vaccine, the Oxford vaccine, AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, and the Moderna vaccine, although we have still not used
4 vaccines.
3 vaccines. 3 vaccines. And approved in the UK, but in addition you have the Russian vaccine, the Gamaleya vaccine, you have 3 Chinese vaccines.
So 1 Russian vaccine and 3 Chinese
3 Chinese vaccines, again at different stages of approval, not in the UK but in other countries. And then you have the 2 newer vaccines coming in. One is the Novavax vaccine, which the trials have been completed in the UK and have been released, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So there is a sort of a handful of vaccines which will be used in this current pandemic.
So all these vaccines you said, they are generally in the higher safety margins on them.
Exactly, because the important thing which we always talk about is the vaccines that have been approved.
Yeah.
But we must remember that in Australia there was the CSL vaccine which was found to be problematic, and it was stopped, it was got rid of. Another vaccine, Sanofi was developing another vaccine with another pharmaceutical company in the UK. Again, that was found to be not effective. It was stopped. Merck
so they haven't given to the public.
Absolutely.
On the production level, they found it on the test, it was not effective, they stopped it.
And then they stopped it. So they are changing route and trying to improve that vaccine, but it is not going. So we only hear about the vaccines that have really been approved. But there are some that have, and that is one aspect in Australia, because they put a lot of emphasis on the CSL vaccine, which did not work, and now they're finding there is a bit of a vaccine shortage because they put a lot of emphasis on that vaccine, which did not, they had to stop developing that vaccine.
So that's again a good point. So all the vaccines which are approved are generally very safe.
As the regulators have gone through in detail, we as clinicians, as scientists go through the publications, etc., but regulators have the actual primary data from these different patients, and they have gone in detail, and it's across the regulators. I mean, you had the British regulators, the European regulators, WHO came out today with telling that the AstraZeneca vaccine could be given to everyone, to all ages. Then you had the US regulator. FDA is not an easy regulator to please. I mean, they are very stringent. So they have gone through the regulator. It's not that someone is just saying, oh no, this vaccine should be taken.
Are there any vaccines for especially third world or developing countries or third world countries like, let's say, Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka, or in
Absolutely.
Africa?
I think that's a very good question, because some of the vaccines, the storage conditions are very difficult, and transport and storage, -70, -30, it's difficult in certain areas of Africa and Asia. Secondly, the cost. Some of the RNA vaccines cost far more to get compared to the viral vector vaccine. Now, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine is being given to the world at cost. It's about $3, $3 to $4 to $3 per dose.
Per dose.
So the thing is that, and then the Oxford vaccine was licensed to the Serum Institute of India, which was manufacturing it.
So it's produced in India. That's
It is
fine.
produced, and that is the one that is being used now. They have been given to Sri Lanka, where they used it on medical personnel, and that vaccine can be stored at 4 to 8 degrees in the fridge. Therefore, I mean, a country like Sri Lanka, a country like Bangladesh, Maldives, etc., in India, I mean, that is a wonderful sort of combination of the cost being low, effective vaccine, and it can be stored in the fridge rather than needing big sort of. So, depending on the country, the US, the two vaccines that are being used is the Moderna and Pfizer.
Moderna and Pfizer.
Those are the only two vaccines.
So
that
the
are being
vaccines
used.
they use in countries like Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, India, they've been given by the UK, isn't it?
They were licensed.
Licensed from the UK.
So the Serum Institute of India is one of the biggest manufacturers of vaccines in the world. I mean, it's like the vaccine factory in the world is India. And if you, they're
the biggest manufacturers
of vaccines as a general, I mean, as a whole. So therefore, they licensed this vaccine, and it's produced in India, and it's also being given to the neighboring countries.
Excellent. Quick, what percentage of the world need to be vaccinated in point form quickly?
So
we got 3 minutes left.
At least 60 to 70% to get herd immunity, and that is, so initially they will focus on the high risk groups and then move on to the other groups.
Okay. If we don't vaccinate, what percentage of people might die?
I mean, you could see the amount of people who have died now, right? And more than 1 million people, and the number of people who have had the infection. So, and that is having, in addition to the death, it is affecting health services. We are finding that it's impossible to manage some of the ITUs.
Excellent. Pregnant mothers and children, can they have vaccine?
Yes, so pregnant mothers who are in the group, who within the first group
what is that group, please?
Healthcare workers or social care workers who are expected to get the vaccine now, if they are pregnant, that is the group that you will.
So they can have.
Absolutely.
So it is safe for pregnant mothers.
Children, it has still not been licensed, and children not given the vaccine because the trials were over the age of 18.
Okay, allergy, who can't have vaccine?
Yeah, so with the Pfizer vaccine, there were some people who had severe allergies, who had allergic reactions. So that group you have to be a bit careful. But the other group, I mean, otherwise you would give the vaccine to the whole group of patients.
New variants in vaccines.
So a big important thing. We know the new variants. The UK variant. You had the South African, the Brazilian, the Los Angeles, and now other additional variants of the UK variant. And so far there are 5 things that you look with regards to a variant. Does it increase transmissibility? Does it increase severity of the infection? Does it affect the testing? Does it affect the vaccine response? And so far what has been found is transmissibility is increased by a lot of these different variants. However, the vaccine response, you found that the UK variant, it appears that most of the vaccines can manage with the UK variant, but the South African variant is the troubling variant, because some of the lab work and the clinical work is showing that the vaccines may not be as effective. And we know about the small trial in Oxford vaccine in South Africa, where they found that it was not very protective, and they stopped using that vaccine.
Thank you very much, Professor Suranjit Seneviratne. It was an amazing program, and we have covered most of it.
Okay.
I'm glad with it. Okay, do you want to say a quick message for anybody who doesn't like to vaccine? They call anti-vaxxers.
I think all the data points towards the benefits of vaccination. You could look at the data from countries that have vaccinated more people, and that it is preventing the transmission, preventing people going into hospital and dying.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyway, thank you very much for being with us in Iron Health Talk with Dr. Akram. The program was about to vaccinate or not, and we'll see you in next program. Until then, look after yourself. Thank you.